This is Spectrum.
Alternative medicine, homeopathy, secrets, society, hypnosis, the paranormal, alternative, energy, UFO, abduction, the weird, the wild, and the wonderful.
With your hosts, Tom Theophanis and Scott Jordan.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Spectrum Radio Network. I'm Scott Jordan, and remember, there's no such thing as too much information. Hey guys, how you doing? It's been a while. Haven't talked to anybody. Haven't had any interviews in a while because I've been working 12-hour shifts in my real-life job. But we're back, and we have a guest today. His name is Jerry Cannon. He spent over 20 years experiencing synchronistic events that's led him on a search for Atlantis, the Ark of the Covenant, and a possible second Sphinx on the Giza Plateau. Gary was born on April 6, 1935, in the East End of London, UK. Early in Jerry's life, he was conscripted, like many British subjects, to serve 2 years in the military, and he went to the Canal Zone in Egypt for 1 year as a photographer. In his life, Jerry's worked in several businesses, including buying and selling used clothing. His main business was antique reproduction shops and an auction gallery. He became involved with a Mormon scientist who invented a method to manufacture cement 8 times harder than normal, which he promoted in the UK in 1991. Jerry became involved in a paranormal search for the lost Ark of the Covenant, which caused him and his wife Mary to move to southern Spain. During many trips to Egypt, he made friends with the archaeological officials of the Giza Plateau, Lower and Upper Egypt, and also Luxor. Jerry discovered a Sphinx-shaped limestone mound in the western desert that resembled the Sphinx of the Giza Plateau. He also found what he thinks is a second Sphinx on the Giza Plateau that has yet to be unearthed. According to his research, years of searching and synchronistic and psychic events, Jerry now thinks that he's found the cave where the Ark of the Covenant has been buried under the sand for millennia. Let's welcome Jerry Cannon. Hello, Jerry.
Hi.
Nice to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure.
Remember, I'm talking to you all the way from Spain and Europe. We're a long way away from Canada.
Ah, that's true. That's true. Bit of a hop, skip, and a jump. How would you like to start?
Well, let me first tell you about the Ark of the Covenant, although many of you are probably aware of these facts. It was made during the time when Moses led the children of Israel on an exodus from slavery in Egypt, which according to many scholars was around 1450 BC. However, some Hebrew scholars dated it at 1350 BC, but no one knows the exact date anyway. It was made to house the Ten Commandments written by the finger of God, so the Bible says, on 2 tablets of stone, which were given by God to Moses on mountain in Sinai called Horeb. And nobody knows where that actually is now anyway. The ark was made under the guidance of a guy named Bezalel, who was a son of Ur. It's described in Exodus chapters 25, verses 10 to 22, so it's quite a little story. The box of the ark was made with acacia wood, which is a very hard wood that no insects can penetrate. Beaten gold was covered the inside and outside of the box, which I presume would make the box last indefinitely so as to preserve its contents. The dimensions of the box were described as being 2.5 cubits in length by 1.5 cubit in height by 1.5 cubits in width, and a cubit's around 18 inches, so you can work that out. 2 winged cherub figures of pure gold sat facing each other either side of the lid, which was known as the seat of God, with their tips of the wings touching each other. 2 pure gold rings were fixed either side of the box to support 2 poles, also made of acacia and coated with gold. 4 priests of the tribe of Levi were the ones that carried the box on their shoulders using these poles. They would have to travel, they were told to travel 200 cubits, which was 18 inches times 2,000, ahead of the Israelites so as they'd clear the way from any dangers or anything else that was around. No one really knows what the ark actually looks like, although many have drawn their interpretation of it, including me.
Okay, what started you on this research path?
Well, perhaps my story should begin after I was involved in a serious automobile accident. Fortunately, no one in either car was hurt at all. It happened in London in 1965 as I was crossing an intersection in a small road where there was no indication that shows the right of way. The van crossed at the same time and both of the vehicles collided. My car rolled over a few times and I was not aware of any shock and eventually smashed into a brick wall. The car was a total wreck of twisted metal and broken glass. In those days, seatbelts were unheard of in automobiles. Probably if I was wearing one, I probably wouldn't be here to tell the story. I simply crawled out through the window without a scratch on me, and after the accident I heard the comments of passers-by saying, "Wow, whoever's in that vehicle must surely be dead." Still stunned, I asked one of the people to slap me on the back to make sure I was not a ghost standing next to them, as I thought I might have been dead. 2 passengers of the van were detained in hospital with minor injuries and shock, but were released after a few days. Although the police arrived, neither of the parties were prosecuted and there was no road signs posted. As the years went by, I started having many paranormal, unexplained situations, which I have to call experiences, unknown, whatever. The list of events are too numerous to relate at this time. For that and other reasons, I believe that I have been contacted by some psychic energy to find the Ark of the Covenant, which is what I'll be speaking about.
Okay.
Let me talk about the Old Testament first, though.
All right, let's talk about that.
Okay, in chapter 1 in Genesis, it mentioned that in the beginning God created heaven and earth and all that's in it, including animals and mankind. It didn't mention the colour of their skin, although the women that they were born to them were fair. And Genesis mentions that the Nephilim, the Hebrew word translation of the word giants, that is Nephilim, bore the fair women children who became mighty men. You may have known them as the Anunnaki. The same derives from the word in Hebrew of Anak. It is written in Numbers 13:33 actually, that we saw the Nephilim, the sons of the Anak, who became from the Nephilim. That's how it was described in the Bible. The Anunnaki were mentioned as distinguished men and also classed as sons of God. According to the claim of the author Zechariah Sitchin, you probably know him, who I often speak about, he interpreted the Sumerian myths and their gods. The Anunnaki were extraterrestrials according to his interpretations. They came from a planet in our solar system called Nibiru, Nibiru, which orbits the Earth. Due to this unusual orbit, Nibiru comes close to the sun, then goes back to the far reaches of the solar system, roughly 3,600 years. That's if Sitchin's account is to be believed. During the course of their history, the Anunnaki were forced to start looking for researchers and a home elsewhere on our solar system. Where the orbit of their home world, Nibiru, was closest to the sun, they found Earth. The Anunnaki decided that they wanted to lighten their labour load by creating a slave race, using an advanced knowledge of genetics that they combined with genetic material with that of primitive humans and man, and that's how man was born.
It's very interesting you say that, because we had a guest on named William Brown, who is a molecular biologist and has evidence of genetic manipulation of humans. So that's very interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting for me too. I'll have to listen in on that. However, my theory is that they could have landed and colonized on a continent in the Pacific Ocean, later to be known as Lemuria, and perhaps taught them how to live in harmony by giving them certain rules to live by, something like the godly 10 Commandments inscribed on stone or crystal tablets, and they house them in a special container stored in a pyramid-shaped structure with the entrance guarded by a pair of stone crouching figures, something like the Sphinxes. According to some belief, Lemuria had submerged under the sea by a gigantic tsunami, probably caused by a meteorite crashing into the sea. The survivors with their precious container headed in an easterly direction to another land in the Atlantic Ocean, which may have been called Atlantis. It's likely that they could have erected a copy of the pyramid they had in Lemuria to house the box. According to many theories, Atlantis submerged around 10,500 years ago by a catastrophe in the sea. For some reason, the survivor again headed in an easterly direction, taking their box with them, and landed at another specific location that we know in Egypt. And there they had their own technology where they could build the pyramids and house their sacred box. According to Genesis and many other religious teachers and writings, a great flood engulfed the Middle East. Apparently, the pyramids show signs that they were once underwater. That was by the investigations of a Dr. Robert Schoch of the Boston University and the Egyptologist John Anthony West, who I know quite well.
Yeah.
I often wonder why these sophisticated technologies of building the pyramids and no doubt many other gigantic monuments have lost, and no one really knows how they were erected. Maybe the descendants of the giants felt they had enough of planet Earth after so many disasters and fled back to their own planet, but didn't have time to take their precious box with them. A chapter in Exodus tells us that a man named Moses brought the same slave children of Israel out of bondage from Egypt. According to some renowned researchers, that happened around 1450 BC, but still we don't know exact dates. The reason why they were called the children of Israel, which a lot of you might not know, and the country so named, was because Isaac, son of Jacob, had changed his name to Israel when he wrestled with a paranormal figure who said, quoted in Genesis chapter 32, verse 28, "Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have struggled with God and with men, and you have prevailed." And in Genesis 32:30 it says, "So Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved." So the pineal gland is actually a pine-shaped gland about the size of a grain of rice connected to the brain. It's also known as the psychic third eye. You've probably heard that as well.
Yeah.
According to my research, the pineal gland is in an upright position when one is born and travels in different positions during one's life, but it moves to an upright position when one dies. It's quite unusual. My theory is that it acts like some sort of an antenna when it's in an upright position, picking up some sort of invisible radio-like waves and converting the brain into thoughts. In other words, and when a psychic can tell you accurately about your past, there's a good chance that the things what he tells in the future can probably be correct. Why is it that some psychic can tell accurate events that happened in the past and inaccurate to others? Perhaps the psychic's pineal gland within an upright position or some other position when he did the reading.
Okay, so it's possible, what you're saying is it's possible that if a psychic's basically tuning into you, that wherever the position your pineal gland is in your life may line up to where theirs is on their life, and that's why they can read you so well, is because they're tuning into you. That frequency is open and the communication can occur.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, anyway, let's get back to the Exodus. If Moses brought up the Pharaoh's daughter, then he would have certainly been educated and he would have known more about the pyramids than we know today and probably aware of chambers that are now hidden and perhaps the box of records that the giants had stored within. He would have also known the geography of the land. 3 verses in Exodus mentions that the children of Israel must bring out gold jewelry when they leave Egypt. And why the hell would they need that? Surely more essential things would be food and weapons to